Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this video is about forms. I haven't done that many videos just on the actual form elements themselves, so I thought I would do that. So I'm going to make a new folder here. I'm going to call this forms and just talk about forms. Okay, and let's create a new file. We'll just call it index.html. Let's do the JavaScript in the HTML. Exclamation point, boop. Okay. So first let's just talk about different form fields. So there are different input fields that you can use. Okay. So even before we talk about form fields, there's input fields, and inputs can come in different types. So such as text. Let's just copy a bunch of these. Number, password. Okay, there's a few other ones. Trying to think what other ones are there that are in this area. But we'll leave it at that. Those are sort of the main ones. Okay, and I'm going to talk about like text area, select, and some of the other ones, but just wanted to get this one out of the way first. So let's show this in live server, so you can just see these elements on the screen. Oh, it's all the way down there. Did I not save or something? Input equals text. Oh, man. So I literally just woke up. So you have to actually specify the type property of the form field. So type equals password, type equals number. And see, now you can see it. So here I can just put in any kind of text. Here I have to put in a number, and I can just use this up and down, do it, or I can just type in the number. And then here I can type in a password. So it's just a text field, but it hides what I'm typing. So all I see is these asterisks, yet underneath it is the actual value that I'm typing. Cool. Now in these properties, there's a couple other properties you can set. Oftentimes very useful is the name property that sets a name. Okay, so we'll just say name text. And you can usually use this to refer to. So oftentimes with, let's say, something like jQuery or with React, you're going to use this property as the way to grab that specific form field. Name equals number. Name equals password. Okay, and this shouldn't have any cosmetic change, so still the same. But now, if I go into my console and I do document dot query selector, and I say, hey, I would like to grab the element that has the name that equals text. Let's do it this way since. Okay, let's see, it picks up that it's an input. So I hit enter and see that input gets selected. Okay, so I could use that name property as a way to grab that element. If it was jQuery, it would be like $, and then same thing. So it'd be like name equals text. Except right now I don't have jQuery installed, so it's not. This is not going to work. It's just going to be like, what's this $symbol function? Ah, it still picked up on it. Okay, even though I don't have jQuery configured in this one, I guess the browser is familiar with jQuery enough that it just figured it out. So, very cool. Okay, but either way, I'm grabbing the same element. That's good to know, but that's what happens. Interesting. Makes me wonder if I can, if in the browser API they just use the $symbol because of jQuery as a shorthand for a query selector, because jQuery is so popular. I'll have to play with that more later. That raises some interesting questions. Okay, so those are the inputs. Now there's other fields. So there is things like text area, which creates a big text area. Okay, so you see something like that, you get something like this that you can type in. Okay, although why does it have all that text in there? Let's take a look. I didn't specify anything in there. I think that's Has to do with me running live server. So live server is injecting all that in the text area for some reason. Yep, see right there. Code injected by live server. Why is it injecting it there? Not sure why. Okay. Now in all these fields you can also interject. If you want to have like pre-written text, you could use this value property. Hello. Okay. And see, that will be, let's see, let's refresh. And see, now that's in the text. Hello. Okay. But maybe I don't want it to, like usually, maybe you want to keep it empty, right? You want the value to be empty because you don't want them to be submitting hello, but you want to have something that tells them that, hey, this is where you type in, let's say, your name. Okay. That's where placeholder comes in. Placeholder puts something in the box, but when you submit the form, that's not the value of the field. So placeholder, type name here. And now when I go over here, see it's like grayed out, but now I know I need to type my name in there. Okay, so you have a lot of properties you can play with. Okay. And then text area has a lot of properties. I always forget all of them. To fix the height and width. So let's see here, width. I think I can set the width this way. Width equals 500 pixels. Let's see if that does what I think it does. No. Okay, let's go look that up. Text area. Okay, name. Okay, there we go. That's how you specify the height. Rows and columns. More importantly is how to specify whether it can resize or not. So that's all fine, fine. Rows, wrap, placeholder, max length form, disable dir name calls, autofocus. Text area should be visible. Dir name, form, ID, name, placeholder, read only. Rows, wrap. Read only, placeholder, text, yep. Max length. There's another property for whether you want to resize it or not. That's not showing up here. Ah, here we go, resize none. Cool. Oh, it's a CSS property, that's why. Okay. But yeah, so it'd be like row 50 calls 50, and then you can specify the specific height. So that's a little big. And let me just see if it lets me do it here. Size equals none. No, I have to do that in the CSS. That's fine. So you can do inline CSS like this. Style equals resize none, and there you go. Same deal. Now I can't resize this box anymore. Cool. Okay. So again, so this is used for like larger text areas. Like you're going to type in a lot more text than just like one line in these fields. And then instead here, there's no value property. It's whatever's in between the text area tags that becomes sort of the starting value. But you can still put a placeholder on this tag. So just to keep that in mind. Okay, there is the select tag. This creates a drop-down menu. And the way this works is that you enter a menu for each one. So we'll say, hey, option is a tag. And the value is the actual value when you pull the value from the form. So let's say, you know, the dog and a dog's ID number is like 156YU, but I wanted to say dog in the menu. Okay, and then I will just give a couple of these. Dog, cat. And again, all these can be styled. Cat. Bird. And then again, different ID numbers. Okay, and see here we get a drop down cat bird. Okay, and we go find input tags from here. Input. I'm gonna go some of the other ones. Cause see, here's like all the different input types that you have. There's a lot of interesting things you can have here. Radio buttons, range, submits for a submit button. Cool. Okay, so that's a field, and I don't have to have a submit button. I could just literally just create a button, and this is generally what you see nowadays. This button, and then your front-end framework like jQuery, you'll use like jQuery or whatever to grab the values from these form fields. Okay, instead of having it all wrapped up in a form tag. Now the form tag, so let's wrap this up in a form tag. So form. Let's copy the closing form tag. Control X. This was designed for when you had multi-page applications were the norm. So you would submit the form would then send the information to another page. So what you would do is you would sit there and say like form, I think it's what, target, and then here you'd specify a URL in which the form data gets submitted to, and then that form data would do its thing and then submit them to another page, and then it would like redirect you to another website or another page on the website. Okay, nowadays everything's a single page application. Okay, so the need, because this would make it really easy. Okay, basically what would happen is that you would just take the form data and it would just be submitted to wherever. Now let's see here. Okay, and you have a event called onSubmit. That's like a function that runs when the form is submitted. Okay, which it can still be useful. Okay, but if you decide you still want to use a form tag to group everything, you don't have to. You can just have all these inputs separately and use jQuery to create like a variable for each one and grab the value, or bind them to state in React, or bind them to a value in your data in Vue. Either way, you could, and then just have a function that does the thing you need to do. But if you wanted to use the form as like this, but without going to another page, because by default it's going to refresh the page on you. So let me just show you. Like I just put / here, which means it'll just go back to the page that you're on. Okay. If I hit submit, which right now the button doesn't have any text, so we should probably give the button some text and actually make it an input button. So input type equals submit. The value is the text on the button, so value equals submit. And all this submit button does is that submit button will take a look to see if it's wrapped inside of a form tag, and then submit the form data as URL form encoded data, not as JSON data, but as URL form encoded data, which has different headers and a different backend setup. It submits the data that way to the URL as a post request by default to the URL here. And here I can actually specify, just to be explicit, I can be like method equals post. Okay. So just submit the form and watch the page refreshes. So if I go in the console, let's say I just type in some gibberish, okay, this will all disappear because the page is going to refresh. Okay, or error because I guess / doesn't. Okay, because there's no website called forms. So / I see why, because it's looking for this. So I'll just put / forms index.html as the target. Okay, let's try that again. Put some stuff in the text here. Okay, that's fine. But the point is that it tries to take you to another page. That's the problem, and we don't want it to. Okay, so how do we fix that? Okay, for that you're gonna need JavaScript. So what you want to do is not specify all this. Leave all this alone. Okay, and then let me make a script tag. So first, let's just take the form element and stick it to a variable. So const form equals document dot query selector. Form Okay. And then we're going to add a function to form. So form dot add event listener. And we want it on submit. So basically this function happens when someone submits to the form. So they hit that submit button. Because that's a form event, not an event of the button. Okay. Then we have to pass in a function. And again, a event function always takes in an event object that we can use because we're going to need it. And for me to prevent that refreshing of the page, I have to do event.preventDefault function. And while I'm at it, I'm going to console.log the event.target, which is the form element, and I'm going to console log its value. Okay, and let's see what that value is. Because this will show you why you might still want to use a form tag. Okay, so now, let me refresh the page. Let's put some values here. 6. I hit submit. Okay, the value is nothing, so that's fine. We'll come back to that. But you see, it didn't refresh the page because that event.preventDefault prevents it. Okay, so if you are going to use a form tag, then let's just print out. Let's console log just the target. Okay, because the form values should be accessible in there. So submit. Okay, form. Okay, and see it prints out the entire form. Okay. Because the entire form is the element. I'm trying to think if there's a good way to access this. I think we can go to event.target.children probably. Children. Yep, and then you have this. And then you could kind of loop over this and grab all the values. So here's the value of the text input, which if we scroll all the way down to its value property, value, well, right now it's empty. So let's go to the text area, because that's the only one that actually does have a value. I clicked on the wrong thing. Input, what do I have here? Oh, I see. This is the text area right here. So text area, scroll down, way to the bottom, and we see the value is this gibberish, because that was we set that as a default value. And if I go to the select and I go to the value of the select value, right now it's 156U, the value of dog, because that's what's selected. So you could grab all those values from here. Not super useful. Yeah, really, like, this is using a form tag unless you're doing multi-page applications, or you really want to have your request submitted as form URL encoded data. Which is not the norm anymore. Not too much of a need for it. I don't see much practical use, so I usually just don't use the form tags. Okay, I'll just get rid of those because I can just use a button and instead use a click event on the button. And the button, I don't have to worry about event.preventDefault. Okay, it's not going to refresh. The button isn't. That's not sort of what the button is thinking is going to happen, because the button was just made for any event, while a form submit button, input submit, is built for submitting a form, so it has that sort of built-in sort of refresh deal. Now, some other things you can do, like if you wanted to create like a area that gets kind of like boxed around. Okay, well, let's see, I think it's not legend. Legend would be the name. Let me remember what it's called. Form fields, URL, HTML, forms. Here we go, that's what I'm looking for. Where's the field I'm looking for? Label, I mean, we'll come back to label in a second. Do. And Here, form elements is what I'm looking for. Input select field set, that's what I'm looking for. So what a field set allows you to wrap certain fields in a box. So I go field set here, and I go field set. This is just more aesthetic. Control C. If I do that, it should have a little bit of an aesthetic change. So you see, like, though it kind of tries to create a box. It's not. I'm not doing it all that well right now. I'll read property add event listener of null. Oh yeah, because I've got rid of the form. So let me get rid of that code. So let's get rid of that. Oh, because the field set's still. Get rid of that closing tag. Now we should see it. See, there you go. So see, it creates a box around the fields. Okay, now if I want that field to have a name, I put a legend tag in it, a legend, and say, hey, some fields. And see, now you get some that effect on there. So it's just a way to kind of make your forms prettier. And again, you can style all these things. Okay, also you might want to put a label. Okay. Okay, and then labels. Let's go back to the labels for a second. There's an easy way and an annoying way to do labels. I like to do it the easy way, because why do it the hard way? Label, label, label. I think it's back over here. Here we go. What you can do is you can actually wrap the input with label. Then you don't have to worry about the whole for property. So I'll just put label. Okay. And I'm going to say this is name. And then I'm going to end the label here. And because the input is in the label tag, it knows that it belongs to that. So let's see here. And see, there you get a name. We can put some space in there. And the benefit of this is really the reason we want to do labels, is because for, let's say you have someone who's going through your website who's blind, they're going to click on the screen, and this label tag is going to cause the computer, the device, to read name when they click on that field, which is going to make the website more accessible to people with accessibility issues, which is good practice because you want more people to visit your website than not. Yeah. So that's the basics of forms. But again, you don't have to use a form tag. You can just use a button to submit. So that's what I will typically do. I will just have a button and have a function that will grab all the values from all the fields and then submit it through a post request, a put request, or whatever to my server, versus sort of the traditional form tags with everything inside of it and an input submit button, which is great if you're doing a multi-page application and you're using templating and all that stuff. But if you're using JSON data, making JSON requests, you just put the fields in there, make them look nice, hit the button, have the button go retrieve the values and send it out. So hopefully you found this useful. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Make sure to go join the Slack and Discord community over there at devnursery.com. And I'll see you guys later.